Hello, this is Carrie Lynch, Grant Specialist at the New York State Archives. If you're currently managing a grant through our Local Government Records Management Improvement Fund, or LGRMIF grant, you might find this tutorial helpful if you need to make changes to your project budget. As many of you know, project budgets undergo extensive analysis as part of the grant review process. So if a change needs to be made to an original proposal after you've been awarded funds, there are some steps that we ask grantees to follow in order to amend a budget. At a glance, the steps we require for a budget amendment are, first, speaking with your Records Advisory Officer. Second, determining if your amendment is formal or informal. Third, completing and submitting the online budget amendment summary. And fourth, filing the FS10A form if the amendment turns out to be formal. Let's look at all of these steps in more detail. First and foremost, grantees needing to amend their budgets should contact their Records Advisory Officer, or RAO, to talk over the change they need to make and get their RAO's approval. Any proposed change to the budget needs to keep the original intent of the project in mind, and RAOs are wonderful resources for having that conversation. If you're not sure who the Records Advisory Officer is for your government type, you can find that information on the New York State Archives website under the Contact Us link at the bottom of our homepage at www.archives.niced.gov. Once you've talked over your budget change with your RAO and received the go-ahead to proceed with your amendment, you'll want to determine if your budget change is considered formal or informal. A formal amendment requires the submission of an FS10A form, while an informal amendment does not. The rules for determining submission of an FS10A form are set forth by the New York State Education Department's Grants Finance Unit, which is a separate office from the State Archives Grants Administration Unit. The points you see in this slide are taken directly from the Grants Finance Unit's FS10A form, and any one of these will trigger the need to submit that form. Just a couple of notes about the bullet points in this slide. The first one, dealing with changes in personnel, can throw people for a loop. That's because, in this case, there is usually no movement of funds. You might have hired 2 inventory clerks for your project, but now you need 3. The amount of money in support staff salaries, Code 16, isn't changing, but you still need to file an FS10A because you're hiring an additional person. Similarly, any change in number or type in the equipment category, Code 20, means filing a formal amendment, as does any change to minor remodeling, Code 30. Number 4 is one of the most frequent reasons for a formal amendment, any increase in a budget subtotal by more than 10% or $1,000, whichever is greater. As for point number 5, this one actually doesn't apply to the LGRMIF program, but we include it here because it appears on the FS10A form and could be applicable to other programs. If your budget amendment does not meet the conditions that we just talked about on the previous slide, then your amendment journey is shorter because you do not have to submit an FS10A form to our Grants Program Office. You just need to speak with your RAO, then email us in the Grants Unit to give us the specifics of your budget change. We do ask that the communication be by email so that we have a written record of change requests to budgets, even if they don't require the formal FS10A process. Please note that once you've submitted your original grant proposal, no additions or deletions to your budget in eGrants can be made unless it's done by us in the Grants Unit. For that reason, we ask that emails requesting an informal budget change be very detailed regarding item quantities, unit costs, vendor names, and product descriptions, because we'll need to fill in all of that information when we add lines to your budget categories. As I mentioned previously, if your budget amendment is formal, you'll need to log into your eGrants account, click on your project number, and complete the online budget amendment summary. Saving the data in the amendment summary will populate the FS10A form that we talked about, which can then be mailed to us at the State Archives. This is just a glance at the steps involved in completing an amendment, so to make the process a little more comfortable, let me sign into the eGrants system and show you what these steps look like in real time. We'll start from the New York State Archives homepage and work our way to the login page for the Grants portal, just in case you need a refresher. So here we are at the New York State Archives homepage. archives.nised.gov, and you'll see that there are a number of links across the top of the page that give you different options on the site. But what we'd like to do for now is go to Grants and Awards, and if you just hover over it, you'll see the Local Government Records Management Improvement Fund link pops up. So we'll follow that. And this is the LGRMIF landing page. If we come over to the left-hand navigation bar and we click on eGrants, apply for a grant, and then scroll down just a bit, you'll see the link for login to the eGrant system. So we'll go there. And it looks like eGrants doesn't want to cooperate. So I am going to quick go to my history. I'm going to clear my browsing data. Clear data. If this ever happens to you, this is a good way to try and clear the problem, is to just clear your cache. And then we'll come back and we'll see if that worked. And we'll try logging into the eGrant system again. Okay, there we go. That's a quick fix if that ever happens to you. So you'll sign in with your user ID and your password. If by some chance you need to recover your username or you have forgotten your password, you can certainly take care of that right here from the login page using the links for forgot your username or password. Otherwise, go ahead and sign in. My page looks a little bit different from what you'll see because I'm signing in as an administrator, but you'll be able to go to these are the grant programs you may apply for, and you'll click on the LGRMIF. And for you, you'll see a list of any grants that your local government has applied for in the past, and of course the one that you have currently. So you would click on your current project number. I'm going to click on the one that I've set up for this demonstration. And this application checklist should look familiar to you because when you applied for your grant, you went to the initial application link. When it's time to close out your grant, you'll go to final reporting. But for right now, we're going to visit the FS10A amendment optional link. And the reason it says optional is simply because, of course, it's not mandatory that you should have to amend your budget. But if you do, this is the link that you'll want to follow. And on the budget amendment checklist, we have a link for the budget amendment summary, which we'll visit in a moment. Instructions for budget amendments, which you have at your disposal for when you're doing this on your own, and then a link to the actual FS10A form, which if your amendment is formal, you'll want to be filing this form. So let's take a look first at the budget amendment summary, because whether your amendment is formal or informal, you'll want to make sure that you visit this link. So at the top of the page, there are some brief instructions. And then down below here, we have the address where you'd be sending the FS10A form if that's necessary for your amendment. And then at the very bottom in the corner, we have links to the FS10A form in HTML and PDF files. And we do tend to prefer the PDF. So the first thing that you want to do to get yourself started is you want to be able to add data to show what you're doing with your amendment. So we're going to hit the Add button. And remember in the PowerPoint slide, we talked about how you might have to change the number of personnel that you've hired for your project. You might not be moving money around, but you're changing the number of people hired. Let's take a look and see what that looks like. Let's say that we're doing an inactive records project, and we have some folks who are hired as inventory clerks. So we're going to change that to support staff salaries, which is code 16. And we're going to say that we're changing the number of clerks we're hiring from 2 to 3. So in this case, we're not moving any money around, so let's put a 0 in the increase column and a 0 in the decrease column. And now we're going to save that change, very important. So now let's take a look. If we go down to the link for the FS10A form and we'll look at the PDF version, your local government information is going to import into the top part of the form. Here are the instructions, which we went over in the PowerPoint presentation. If you're filing this form, this middle part, the Chief Administrator Certification, is where your CAO will sign and date in blue ink when you print this out. This bottom part is for the Grants Administration Unit when we receive your form. And now here we get to the heart of the matter. You see where we said that we're increasing the number of clerks from 2 to 3, We're not moving any money around, so our increase and decrease is 0, which if you look at the bottom of the form is also reflected here, plus $0 and minus $0, which means that the net increase or decrease also we have is 0. Now the previous budget total and the proposed amended total, that's going to be the amount of your total grant award. And so the third and fourth lines should never change. Whatever the amount of your award is what should be showing on lines 3 and 4. For me, this is just the amount of the award that I set up for this demonstration. So whatever amendments that I show you, the $73,768 should never change on the third and fourth lines because that's the total amount of this pretend award and that's not going to change. So let's close out the FS10A for just a moment and we'll go back to the budget amendment summary and let's look at a little bit more traditional example of what moving money around might look like. We'll stick with the idea that perhaps we're doing an inactive records project and perhaps we have some minor remodeling going on. We're fixing up a records room. And we also would have some money perhaps in supplies and materials. But we're going to say we need to take some money from supplies and materials and put it into minor remodeling. So let's see what that would look like. First, let's show the decrease. We're going to say we're taking money from supplies and materials. And this time we'll say perhaps we were thinking that we would get 2 fire-resistant filing cabinets. Now we're just going to get 1 because we need to put some money into minor remodeling. Delete the 0 from that previous example. And let's say we're taking $2,500 out of supplies and materials. Going to hit save. Make sure we save that data. But now we need to add another line because now we need to show where that $2,500 is going. So here's our new line, and we said we're going to put it in minor remodeling. So we'll say something unexpected came up with the HVAC system and the contractor needed some more money to work on that. So we're going to increase minor remodeling by $2,500. We make sure we hit save again. So we have $2,500 coming out of supplies and materials and $2,500 going into minor remodeling. And if we go back to our FS10A form, that change should be reflected now in the form. And there you see $2,500 out, $2,500 in. Now the increase and decrease columns are showing different numbers because we've said we're moving $2,500 into one budget code from another. The net increase or decrease is still 0. And of course, the previous budget total and proposed amended total is still $73,768 because all we did was take $2,500 out of one category and move it into another. So the total amount of the award has not changed. And there's any number of ways that you might need to move money around. You might need to take $2,500 out of supplies and materials and put $1,500 into minor remodeling and $1,000 into a third category. The important part is that the subtotal decrease and increase come out the same in the end so that everything comes out evenly and you haven't accidentally made it look like you're either increasing or decreasing the total amount of your grant award. And if you ever have any questions about this or the way this looks when you try and do it, just contact us in the grants unit and we'll help you out. One thing also to note is that, especially for supplies and materials, if you're making additional purchases in supplies and materials, just be sure to be very specific about anything you're adding to this category because we'll need to know things like the name of the vendor, a description of the item, the unit cost, those kinds of details so we can add those lines to your budget. So just make sure that you're very specific in the description boxes about what it is you're purchasing if you're adding any supplies to your grant. When everything is filled out the way that you want and you know it's going to print out with the correct numbers, you can go to your PDF link, print out 3 copies if it's a formal amendment, have them signed and dated in blue ink by your CAO, and send that to the address that you see on this page at the Cultural Education Center in Albany. The other thing you want to make sure you do if you go back one step to your forms list is to make sure whether your amendment is formal or informal, make sure that you hit the Submit Budget Amendment button here at the bottom. This is actually a live link. For me, it gives me the angry red circle because I'm actually doing this demo in an old fiscal cycle, so that deadline has passed. But for you, it should be a live link, and it would allow you to submit your budget amendment. That forwards the electronic information to us, whether it's formal or informal. And then if it is a formal amendment, we'll know to keep an eye out for your FS10A form that will be coming in the mail. And again, if you have any questions about this process, just let us know because I'll be giving you our contact information momentarily. Before we wrap up, one last point that's important to remember is the deadline for filing budget amendments. This typically occurs 1 month before the project deadline, so be sure to check our website for the exact date by which those changes need to be submitted. We hope this tutorial has been helpful to you, but please do let us know if you have amendment-related questions. We can be reached at the phone number or the email address listed in this slide. Thank you.